Consequently, the ASI was tasked with the excavation to find out what exists there. Now it is rumored that the Delhi that exists today is the 7th city in the same layer, that there are 6 Delhis beneath. You keep digging, you will keep getting a Delhi of a previous era. That is basically the understanding of it from an archaeological standpoint. So if you go to the High Court, there is a Bhairav Mandir there. People, I don't know how many people notice this. What does it say on the top? Pandavkalin Mandir. The belief there, if on that it says Pandavkalin Mandir, I don't know how many people even read this. I have never stepped foot into that particular temple, but when I drive past that place or I'm driven past that place, I see that. It says so. Therefore, according to somebody's belief, this was built by them. That is similarly the belief in Kedarnath also. Right? So, you may or you may not be in a position to test each of these propositions because that requires you to travel back in time for several thousand years. But let's go on the basis of what exists today. When they dig up, they find the remnants of what is patently and manifestly a Vishnu temple with all Hindu motifs and Vishnu motifs. So, Vishnu ka vahan kya hai? Please. Let's not be deracinated Indians to some extent. Garud, the eagle. So if you find the chin of Garud, that means it necessarily has to be associated with the Vaishnava structure. Right? If you've been to a Gurudwara or even if you have not entered a Gurudwara, what is the color of the flag? Bhagwa. It is saffron at the end of the day. So it should tell you if there is a color of what faith it could be associated with. To some extent you need to be able to understand. Okay. So when you dig up this place, the judgment discusses in extensive detail the archaeological evidence, the motives, the structures, and they come to the conclusion that it is first of all a temple. किसका मंदिर है वो बाद में देख लेते हैं, लेकिन मंदिर तो है, चाहे वो राम का हो या किसी और का हो, उससे कोई फर्क पड़ता है? मंदिर है नीचे, वो तो एस्टैब्लिश हो गया। अगर मंदिर नीचे है और उसके ऊपर मस्जिद है, then who has to prove how did he get access to this particular land? The one who built the masjid has to prove, and who claims ownership of that masjid has to prove कि भाई किसी ने आके ये लैंड जो है मुझे दान में दे दिया। Okay, like in railway stations they say that ये पानी की टंकी किसी ने दे दिया है, right, all of this. So he has to prove that somebody has donated this piece of property to him. So anyone who claims this has to prove that the title of the particular property was given to him and how. Now, since I spoke of two aspects, one mandir hai, and therefore the person who has constructed the masjid has to prove this. मंदिर अगर है तो वहां से दूसरे बात में जाने की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं है कि राम थे या नहीं, राम थे या नहीं उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, मुद्दे मंदिर पे है, राम का मंदिर है, बस। कन्वीनियंटली नाउ डिस्टॉर्शंस हैव बीन गिवन। अरे भाई अगर राम ही नहीं थे तो राम का मंदिर कैसे हो सकता है? राम के होने पे या ना होने पे मुद्दा नहीं है, लड़ाई उस पे नहीं चल रही है। इट इज अ मैटर ऑफ फेथ। बट मंदिर है इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट, या मंदिर था इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट, राइट? दैट्स ऑल आई नीड टू आस्क माई सेल्फ। Whether Ram was a mythological figure or a historical figure is the subject matter of any discussion in an academic forum. But the question is that there was a temple that was associated with him, or at the very least there was a temple. Once that is identified, I have satisfied the basic threshold that my case is based on some element of fact. Coupled with the fact that I am showing that there are Vishnu motives, तो अगर आप राम को विष्णु के अवतार मानते हैं तो ये शिव का मंदिर तो नहीं हो सकता, ठीक है? तो ये विष्णु का मंदिर बन गया। अब विष्णु के किस अवतार का मंदिर है उस पर लड़ाई करना बेकार है। हाउ डज इट मैटर? इफ इट इज राम का मंदिर ठीक है, या बुद्ध का भी हो सकता है। इफ यू थिंक ही इज द 10th अवतार ऑफ विष्णु, सम पीपल डू बिलीव दैट वे, सो यू नेवर नो। दैट्स व्हाई बुद्धिस्ट आर नाउ सेइंग दैट द लैंड बिलोंग्स टू अस। दे आल्सो कम सडनली इन द फ्रे आफ्टर 50 इयर्स, नहीं ये तो हमारा है। दैट्स अ डिफरेंट इशू। सो एटलीस्ट बुद्धिस्ट एंड हिंदूज आर एड आइडम दैट दिस बिलोंग्स टू विष्णु अवतार। बन गया बात, that's established. So what do you have to prove next? The Sunni Waqf board has to prove that it has got title. Now भाई वक्फ का मतलब क्या है? if some Muslim, a pious Muslim, decides to donate his property and endow it to the community, then that becomes the property of the community. That means भाई आपका भी एक रिकॉर्ड होगा कि भाई इन्होंने ये दिया है तो ये वक्फ का प्रॉपर्टी बन गया। तो अगर ये जो लैंड है वक्फ का प्रॉपर्टी है और सुन्नी वक्फ बोर्ड इस पे लड़ रहा है, then it is for the Sunni Waqf Board to establish that at some stage it was recorded as a waqf property. Every waqf basically has a mutawalli, basically the custodian of the properties. It is for him to show from the records that there was at some stage this was recorded as a waqf property. If you are not able to establish it in all the 500 and 600 years that you have continuously possessed according to you, that means this was never a Sunni waqf property. So what is the purpose of Sunni Waqf Board in the first place to fight on this? इतना तो एस्टैब्लिश हो गया कि ये वक्फ प्रॉपर्टी नहीं है, तो आप किस लिए हैं यहाँ पे? If it belongs to some other Muslim or some other person, he can come and fight, but certainly not the Sunni Waqf Board, because it's a civil dispute. What is your locus? You prove it then. That is established. Next question. You are not able to show that बाबर आए थे या मीर बाकी आए थे और उन्होंने ये आपको दे दिया. If you don't have the document, so your case is not based on a title deed, then it is based on possession. लेकिन अगर नीचे मंदिर है, तो are you in possession or are you in adverse possession? Now for a moment, just pause this here and I'll explain the fallacy in the proposition. If you are in possession, you can't be in adverse possession. If you are in adverse possession, you can't be in possession. These are mutually destructive arguments. They will kill each other. Possession है, इसका मतलब है कि आपको साधारण रूप से मिला है, आपको किसी से छीनने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ी. लेकिन adverse possession है, that means you at least admit that आपने किसी से छीना, and that you have been in adverse possession without being disturbed. Then the threshold is even higher if you are in adverse possession, right? Now that there is a temple, obviously it affects your case of possession. And since you have not been able to establish that this is a waqf property, therefore title is also in question. So title उड़ गया, possession उड़ गया, बचा क्या? Adverse possession. तो adverse possession पे आपको बात करना है. Then you have to show one, what is the nature of my possession? When did I come into possession? Have I been able to enjoy it undisturbed and in peace? Records of a German Jesuit, Joseph Tiefenthaler, from the late 16th century or early 16th century onwards, right until the British, keep saying that there were riots every year in that particular place, especially around the Ram Navami period. That regularly they will fight. Hanumangarhi and this place have been the scenes of pitched battles on a regular basis, year by year. And it's not just the Hindus. Sikhs have come and fought there on a regular basis for the temple. This is recorded history. I challenge anyone to prove me wrong on this particular point. It is recorded history. Therefore, people of Indic religions, people of Indic faiths, have treated this as a place of worship for centuries together. And they have fought on a regular basis. To the extent that they would prevent people from offering namaz, saying, sorry, this is our place of worship, you dare not step into this place. Every year this would happen. And there is proof of it. Jesuits, travelers, colonial records, Muslim records, Hindu records have recorded this on a regular basis. Therefore, what does this affect? Your case of adverse possession is affected. Title गया, possession गया, adverse possession गया. तो बचा क्या? तो 1/3 किस बात का मिला आपको? To prevent riots, to prevent communal tension. Therefore, any party which loses in this particular case can threaten riots and have access to a piece of land. So who is affecting constitutional patriotism, democracy, secularism and rule of law? Here's the funny part. The case is still going on. So somebody could technically say, भाई तो केस चल रहा है तो बात कर रहा है इस पे. How can you do it? इतने सारे articles, इतने सारे books have been written over the decades, especially after the 6th of December 1992, about the case, about the facts of the case. Nobody is being stopped. Nobody is being stopped from coloring the opinions of people without telling them what are the facts before the court. Once the Allahabad High Court comes with a judgment, they say ये पूरी judgment जो है आस्था के basis पे लिखी गई है. अरे, have you read the judgment? Unfortunately, news cycle, 24/7 news cycle, and the nature of debates on television do not afford a discussion of this nature. You will never be able to complete one sane, logical, grammatically correct and sensible statement without being interrupted 1,000 times, no matter which television channel. Therefore, all these facts and the principles of law and common sense which applies to this case, it has been effectively brushed under the carpet. In this entire case, show me the place where you can accommodate articles 25 and 26. कहां से घुसाएंगे आप articles 25 and 26 को इस पूरे argument में? If anything, if a party has proved its case on the basis of evidence with respect to a place of worship which it has believed in for centuries together, for you to give 1/3 of the property to somebody else is a violation of articles 25 for that particular community. Rule of law of that particular community has been violated. That community has the right to say that I'm sorry that the dice is loaded against me, that the system is loaded against me, that this is nothing but an action of appeasement and which is being sanctioned by not the executive, not the parliament, but another limb. Some people have said it. They're capable of saying it. If you have not been able to prove your case and you have still been given a piece of property only to ensure that there is nothing untoward that happens and so that communities can live in harmony, that means who is threatening the harmony of this country and of communities? The party which has not been able to establish its case in a court of law? None of these discussions, and prove me wrong or correct me if you think I'm wrong. In how many fora have you been able to listen to these aspects of the case purely on principles of law without injecting any other aspect of the discussion? So at best, if you and I have a difference of opinion, it can be on what? That the principle of law was incorrectly applied to the facts of this particular case, or that a certain piece of evidence was given excessive weight when in fact it was apocryphal in nature, when it was not particularly reliable in nature, to benefit a certain party, to benefit a certain community. लड़ाई सिर्फ उसी पे हो सकती है. But if you see every discussion which has happened in mainstream media or articles which are written, they are all in broad strokes, as if this judgment is written and based only on one thing: faith, faith, and faith. Absolute nonsense, according to me. So, what I am trying to tell you is, this case, while it has a bearing on this case itself, the drama surrounding this case tells you a lot about what is wrong with the nature of discourse in this country. It represents the utter hypocrisy of people who are gatekeepers of information dissemination and formation of opinions and influencing of opinions. It represents the absolute corruption, deliberate corruption, which has single-handedly been responsible for driving wedge between two communities. Take it from me in writing. I am telling you this from my own personal experience, that there are so many members of the community which has lost before the Allahabad High Court who will say, why are we still fighting if the matter is established before a court of law? Why can't we make peace and get away with it? Why don't we just close this chapter? Why don't we make a good example out of this? Whenever somebody says this, the counter argument that is given is, if this starts with Ram Janmabhoomi, where will it end? Kashi, Mathura, all other places are there. So what? If you're wrong there, you're wrong there. What is the name, or what was the name? What is the name of the current capital of Turkey? Istanbul. What was the name of Istanbul before? Constantinople. So there is a change that has happened. Constantinople was the capital of what?
Ottoman Empire.
The Eastern Roman Empire. The Roman Empire split into the Western and Eastern at a later point of time. And during the Crusades, and when the armies of the Arabs turned up at the gates of Europe, the first persons to defend this entire continent, or at least among the frontier countries, would be the people who fall within the erstwhile Eastern Roman Empire. So now if you go to that very popular mosque in Turkey, what was it previously? The Church of Hagia Sophia. That used to be a church. So are you telling me that what has happened across the world hasn't happened in this particular country, when people with the very same mindset went about destroying this country for 1,000 years? I am talking of the rulers, I am not talking of the people in general, I am talking of the invaders, as clearly as that. So you are telling me that Indian history was peculiarly different compared to the examples that visit your eye in every other part of the world. So India is so great that the moment they entered this place, they had a change of heart. Really? Is that the example that meets your eye each time you go? Have you been to the temple in Mathura? The Gyanvapi mosque is so glaring. Students of architecture are taken to the Jama Masjid in Gujarat to show this as a piece of Islamic architecture without being told what it was previously. What is being touted as Islamic architecture is not entirely Islamic architecture. Where has Qutub Minar come from? What about the Quwwatul Islam Mosque? There used to be a board outside the mosque which said that the steps of that particular mosque and the place on which people put their foot has been sourced from 39 to 40 Hindu and Jain temples. Now the board is completely missing because they are worried, "Arey bhai, Ram Janmabhoomi mein jeet gaye to yahan pe bhi aa jayenge." The point is this: you continue to run away from facts. Someday it is bound to come out with greater vigor. And unfortunately, if it comes out in an unconstitutional manner, then you have had it. It is for you to prevent people from resorting to unconstitutional means by telling them that their faith in the judiciary and their faith in the system is justified and vindicated. When do people resort to extrajudicial means? When they realize that the judiciary or any arm of the state is not looking into their interests or doesn't even care for its interests. Every reaction or every action has a certain reaction that happens, and it is for the state to ensure that it strengthens the common man's belief in the judiciary, and these kind of cases are particularly important. Which is why people like me, I don't want to take credit, there are so many people who have said this before me. What is the need of the hour is not going after every place of worship piecemeal by piecemeal, because that is bound to create tensions in each of those areas. Assume that you and I live in Delhi in some elite colony. We will not be affected by it. But the people who live in those areas will be affected by communal tensions. So who is going to take the responsibility for it? You will sit and give your speeches and get away with it, but what about those people? The best way forward is the setting up of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And like a stuck gramophone, I've said this at least in 2 occasions, very clearly saying that you need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the way South Africa had it, so that history is reconciled. You cannot say that no community can have a place of worship in this country other than the Hindu community. That is a stupid statement to make, and that at least today it's not possible. I don't think that's right also. Nor can you say Babar ke santan yahan se wapas jao. That's the stupidest statement that you can make. What kind of statement is that? Those are abhorrent statements which effectively demean your case and dilute your case. You shouldn't be making any of those statements. People have lived here for 8 centuries, 9 centuries. How can you make these statements? I am addressing some sensitive aspects of the discourse which surrounds these issues. Your focus should be only on what? Lawful restoration and restitution of the places of worship which belong to a certain community, and ensure that the descendants of the invaders should not be discriminated against. They should also have their places of worship. They have a right to their place of worship. They are citizens of this country, equal citizens of this country. How is this statement wrong? How is this a statement that lacks balance? The son and the grandson cannot be constantly held responsible for the act of the father and the grandfather. As simple as that. Times have changed, and it is important for you to ensure that the only way forward is the way forward. You can't keep going back. So, if you want to move ahead as a society with a shared version of the future and what you want for yourself as the future, address the past. Therefore, it becomes relevant. or there is one more way forward. So, Dr. Ambedkar in his fantastic book called Pakistan or the Partition of India, it's a book that I would strongly urge people to read, has clearly said that if you fear that digging up history is bound to lead to bad luck between people, then encourage forgetfulness. भूल जाओ और आगे बढ़ो. But दोनों भूलेंगे, सिर्फ एक नहीं भूलेगा. It can't be a situation that someone who's lost his place of worship forgets what has happened to him, and someone who enjoys that particular place constantly beats his chest, we did it, we did it, we did it. That can't happen, no? Because when that happens, effectively, the oppressor, his deeds are actually escalated as achievements, and the victim has forgotten that he is the victim and he proceeds further. This will only encourage a victim complex in the future. Therefore, the best way to do this is this. The worst part is, imagine, this civil property dispute has ramifications on personal relationships between people of both communities. This topic, ask yourself, can you have a sane, rational discussion? If you're a Muslim with a Hindu, if you're a Hindu with a Muslim, among friends, among close friends, is it possible? Not possible at all. That is the level to which you have vitiated the entire discussion. That is the level to which you have poisoned the atmosphere. That is because you have run away from truth. You have either had no guts, or you have a vested interest in brushing the truth under the carpet. I suspect it is the latter. That you do not want the truth to find its place under the sun. Which is why your textbooks completely are silent on all these issues. The leaps that they do in the time frames almost show as if India did not exist for several centuries in between. It's as if we had a whole period which is equivalent to the dark ages of Europe. From the Gupta period, somehow we come directly to the Mughal period. पर बीच में क्या हुआ भाई? Second century से आप लोग सीधा 15th century और 16th century कैसे आ गए? उसके दौरान क्या हुआ भाई? विजयनगर empire क्या हुआ? What happened there? How many armies came together to wipe out one particular empire? 5 armies destroyed one empire. How long did it take for them to destroy the city of Hampi? 6 months. For 6 months they went about rampaging and pillaging and destroying that place. It was burning, which they could see from miles apart. Now, if that has happened in that part of the country, you're telling me this part of the country is remaining perfectly safe and pristine. All of this defies common sense, it defies logic, and it insults the intelligence of every thinking Indian. So, it is people like you who have the skill sets to understand these issues and who are in a unique position to articulate it. The strength of a lawyer is not just the law, but to be able to explain a point of law in a manner that a common person can understand. Break it down for him. Tell him that this is the consequence. It's people like you who can do it. But my sympathies are with you. Because your college atmosphere is loaded in one particular direction. It's difficult to discuss any of these topics without being encountered by slurs like fascist, communal bigot, Sanghi, internet troll, Hindu internet or internet Hindu, whatever that is. What kind of terms are used to stifle a proper discussion? It's unbelievable, it's unimaginable. I've lived through it, but what doesn't kill you makes you only stronger. So as far as I am concerned, I am here to tell you, you guys have to start talking. But for that you need to read first. Arm yourself with facts, with information, with arguments. That when you're confronted with it, don't be scared by numbers. How many people are against you? What is the quality of argument that you're capable of presenting when I'm talking? That's the question that you should ask. That is the only question that matters. If you're in a minority, fantastic, minorities have better rights in this country. So where is the problem? I don't see the problem at all. At least with respect to educational institutions from Articles 28 to 30, they're exempt from RT, whereas everybody else has to suffer the RT. So I'm not wrong in what I'm saying. So as far as I am concerned, follow this case. See how a court of law addresses this case. It makes a lot of difference. People should observe the proceedings of this case, they must monitor the proceedings of this case because it has a bearing on our future, in the future, even if it's a civil property dispute. If a common person has to put faith in the system of justice dispensation, I think this would be a good case to ask whether or not he can put his faith in. I want people to treat law as the way to deal with problems. As a lawyer, it benefits me, that's a different issue. But still, I think that is the less violent way of going about it. I say less violent way of going about it. Okay? And therefore, it is for courts to set an example by ensuring that frivolous, sensational, extraneous, extrajudicial arguments are thrown out the window when this case is heard and argued and adjudicated. Thank you.
Now we will be taking up some questions. Anyone?